My name is Emma, and I sat in my small garden, the soft patter of rain against the leaves creating a peaceful rhythm around me. At 23, I had always followed the path laid out for me, growing up in a quiet town, staying grounded in my responsibilities, and now, working a steady job in marketing in the city. The garden was a quiet retreat from the fast-paced world outside, a place where I could think without distraction. Yet as the rain fell softly around me, I couldn't escape the overwhelming sense of indecision that had settled in my chest. The world beyond my garden seemed to rush on, cars honking, people walking hurriedly along the sidewalk, but here, among the greenery, I was caught in a moment of reflection. The rain made the plants shimmer with life, and the air felt fresh, as though nature itself was urging me to make a change. It was a serene yet tense atmosphere, as I knew that something important was on the horizon. The storm inside me mirrored the rain outside, quiet, yet powerful enough to force me to confront a decision that would alter my future. I had always been bright and determined, excelling in school and securing a comfortable job. But beneath the surface, something was missing. My true passion. Writing had been pushed aside for the sake of practicality and stability. My natural intelligence and hard work had carried me this far, but a lingering sense of doubt and fear of failure kept me from embracing my dreams fully. My goal was clear, yet daunting. I wanted to become a writer, to create stories that spoke to my soul. But fear of failure, of disappointing my family, of stepping into the unknown held me back. As the rain drizzled around me, I realized that the time had come to make a choice. The garden, serene and still, mirrored my internal landscape, beautiful yet trapped, longing for something more. This was the moment when I would decide whether to stay in the safety of the life I knew or take the leap into the uncertain future I truly desired. The stillness of the garden was abruptly shattered by the sound of my phone vibrating on the table next to me. I glanced at the screen, and my heart skipped a beat. It was an email from my boss, the subject line reading, "Urgent, meeting request." A wave of unease washed over me. I had expected some kind of follow-up on a project, but nothing that would make my stomach tighten with dread. As I opened the email, my eyes skimmed through the message, which was short and to the point. "Emma, due to unforeseen changes in company direction, your position has been made redundant. We'd like to discuss your next steps in a meeting tomorrow morning. Please come prepared to talk about your future options. Regards, Jane." The words blurred as I read them over and over. Redundant. My position was redundant. I sat back in my chair, the world suddenly feeling like it had been turned upside down. Everything I had built, the steady job, the security, the predictable routine, was now uncertain. I'd always known that life could change in an instant, but it hadn't felt so real until that very moment. The rain outside seemed to echo my thoughts, tapping softly on the window as if trying to soothe me, but I couldn't shake the anxiety rising in my chest. I had worked so hard to get to this point. I had followed the plan, just as everyone expected me to. Graduate, find a good job, climb the career ladder. But now all of that was slipping away. The fear of the unknown gripped me. I couldn't afford to lose this job. It was my lifeline, my security in the chaos of an unpredictable world. I had no backup plan, no idea what I would do next. But deep down, a small spark of something else flickered, an unfamiliar sense of freedom. It wasn't just fear I felt, there was also excitement, as if the universe was giving me a second chance, forcing me to make a decision I had long avoided. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through social media, trying to distract myself from the impending meeting. But it wasn't the usual scroll of pictures and updates that grabbed my attention. It was an old post, something I had shared a year ago, a reminder of my passion for writing. The words I had once written, almost as a joke, now felt like a call to action. Someday I'll leave all this behind and write my own stories. It had been a passing thought, a dream buried beneath the weight of everyday life. But seeing those words now felt like a challenge, one I hadn't been prepared for, but couldn't ignore. As the night dragged on, I kept going back to that email, reading it over and over. The meeting tomorrow could change everything. It could mean the end of my current life. But it also felt like the beginning of something else. The conflict was clear. I was at a crossroads. On one side was the safety of my current life, the predictable, stable path I had always followed. On the other side was the unknown, the possibility of pursuing my dream of writing, of stepping into a future where anything could happen. But making that choice meant leaving behind the comfort of my job, the career I had spent years building, and embracing a risk I wasn't sure I was ready to take. The stakes couldn't have been higher. I stood to lose everything I had worked for, but I also stood to gain something much more valuable, the chance to finally follow my heart and pursue the one thing that had always made me feel truly alive. The question was, could I take the leap? Would I be strong enough to embrace change, or would fear keep me tethered to a life that no longer felt right? The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. The meeting loomed large, but a part of me knew it was the moment of truth. It wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about my future, my dreams, and the courage I was willing to summon to make a choice. The storm outside had passed, but the storm within me was just beginning. The morning of the meeting arrived, and the moment of reckoning felt like it had stretched endlessly. I walked into the office with a mix of dread and anticipation, knowing that my life was about to change. My manager, Jane, was waiting for me in the conference room. Her face was professional, but I could see a flicker of sympathy in her eyes. The moment I sat down, the weight of the situation settled over me like a heavy fog. "Emma," she began, her voice calm but firm, "as we discussed in the email, your position is being eliminated. I know this is difficult, but we need to start considering your next steps. You've been a valuable member of the team, and we'd love to help you transition into another role, perhaps within the company, or even assist you in finding something else." Her words were kind, but they felt like a dismissal. My heart pounded in my chest, and I tried to stay composed. I knew I needed to act, but my mind raced, unable to settle on anything. After the meeting, I walked out into the busy street, the sounds of the city blurring around me. My future was no longer certain, and that familiar feeling of security, of being in control, was gone. I had no idea what was next, and the uncertainty gripped me with overwhelming force. But there was no time to linger in self-pity. I had to make decisions quickly. I reached out to a few friends, hoping for some guidance. First, I called Anthony, my best friend since childhood, who had always been there for me through every big decision. He answered immediately, his voice full of concern when I explained what had happened. "I'm so sorry, Em," he said, "but this could be the chance you need to do something you've always wanted. You've talked about writing for years. Why not take the leap? You're not tied to this job anymore, and you've got time to figure it out. You've got the talent, I know that." Anthony's encouragement felt like a balm to my anxious heart, but it also stirred something inside me, fear and excitement combined. The reality of what he was suggesting began to sink in. To quit my job and pursue writing meant stepping into the unknown. What if I failed? What if I wasn't good enough? Then there was my mother, who, as always, took a more cautious approach. She listened patiently as I expressed my desire to leave my job and pursue writing full-time. But her words, though kind, were filled with doubt. "Emma, I understand that you want to follow your passion," she said, "but you need stability. You have bills to pay, you have responsibilities. Writing can be a hobby, but it's not something you can rely on. You've worked hard for this job, and you've worked hard to get where you are. Don't throw that away." Her voice echoed in my mind, the conflict between her concerns and Anthony's optimism growing stronger. I could feel the tug of war inside me. Anthony believed in me, but my mother's practical advice reminded me of the life I had worked so hard to build. Would I be foolish to leave it all behind? In the midst of this, I met with my mentor, Laura, a former colleague from my first job out of college. She had always been a guiding figure in my life. Someone who had seen potential in me before I even recognized it in myself. Over coffee, I shared my dilemma with her. "Emma," she said, leaning forward, "I see something in you that I don't see in many people. You're not afraid to dream big. But there's a fine line between chasing your passion and being realistic. You've got the drive, the skill, but you need a plan. If you want to leave your job, you need a financial cushion, a backup plan. Without that, it's too risky. Don't quit until you're prepared." Her advice was sound, and I knew she was right. But it also meant postponing my dreams, putting off the very thing I'd been yearning for all along. The conflict inside me deepened. I felt torn between the stability of the life I had built and the promise of something more fulfilling, but uncertain. In the following weeks, I threw myself into freelance writing projects, testing the waters of my new path. I worked late nights, sending pitches to online publications and writing short stories in my spare time. There were moments of exhilaration when a piece was accepted, and the thrill of seeing my words published brought a sense of accomplishment I had never felt in my marketing job. But there were also setbacks. Not every pitch was accepted, and the constant uncertainty of income weighed heavily on me. I didn't have the luxury of waiting for things to come to me. I had to make it happen, and quickly. Then came the biggest setback yet. After several months of working on freelance projects, I received an email from a company I had pitched to with a subject line I had hoped would bring good news. "Rejection. Writing sample." The message was polite but clear. They didn't think my writing was the right fit for their publication. The sting of rejection was sharp. It brought back all the doubts and fears I had suppressed. What if I wasn't cut out for this? What if I was just another person chasing an unrealistic dream? For days, I found myself questioning everything. But something shifted. I realized that failure wasn't the end, it was just part of the process. With each rejection, I grew stronger. I began to refine my craft, seek out feedback, and find new ways to connect with editors and readers. Slowly but surely, I started to see progress. It wasn't easy. There were nights I doubted myself, days when I thought about returning to the stability of my old job. But with each small victory, each article published, each positive feedback from readers, the idea of writing full-time started to feel more real. I had come a long way from that rainy day in the garden, and though the road was far from smooth, I was learning to persevere. There was still much to overcome: self-doubt, financial instability, societal pressures to take the safe route, but with every challenge, I felt myself inching closer to my dream. The stakes were high, and the journey was only getting more difficult, but I was no longer afraid to take risks. This was the turning point in my story, where I began to accept that failure was a part of success, and the real victory was the perseverance to keep moving forward, no matter the odds. The days leading up to my final decision felt like an unrelenting storm. I had worked tirelessly on my writing, submitting articles, taking feedback, and slowly building a portfolio. But despite the small victories, an article published here, a positive review there, the fear of failure still loomed large over me. The nagging doubt that I wasn't good enough, that I was too late in the game, clawed at me from the inside. It was like I was walking a tightrope, and one wrong step would send me plummeting into the abyss of regret and uncertainty. It all came to a head one crisp afternoon in my small apartment, just a week before I was scheduled to meet with Jane, my former boss. The meeting was intended to offer me an opportunity to return to the company, but as I prepared for it, a voice inside me screamed that it wasn't the right path anymore. I had a decision to make, one that could either propel me forward or drag me back into a life of quiet dissatisfaction. I couldn't keep juggling two worlds, my dream and my old job, any longer. The email came like a bolt from the blue. It was from a renowned magazine I had pitched to months ago, a publication I had admired since I was young. The subject line read, "Exciting opportunity. We want you." My heart skipped a beat. I opened it immediately, my hands trembling with anticipation. "Dear Emma, we have reviewed your writing and are impressed by your unique voice. We would love to offer you a freelance position with our publication, with the potential for a full-time role in the future. We believe you have what it takes to make a significant impact in the industry." The words swam before my eyes. This was it. This was the break I had been waiting for. But with that excitement came an avalanche of fear. The job offer was real, and it was the opportunity of a lifetime. But it also meant that I would have to take the leap. I couldn't keep my foot in both worlds. I would have to walk away from the safety of my marketing job and embrace the uncertainty of a writing career. I sat down on the edge of my bed, my mind racing. What was I supposed to do? If I accepted this offer, I would be stepping into the unknown, leaving behind everything I knew. The security, the routine, the stability, all of it would be gone. But if I turned it down, I would never forgive myself. I had spent years dreaming about this, and now that it was finally within my reach, I was ready to throw it all away because of fear. I stood up, pacing back and forth across the small room, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. My phone buzzed, interrupting my frantic thoughts. It was a text from Anthony. "Are you okay? I know you've been thinking about that big decision. Whatever you choose, I believe in you." His words hit me harder than I expected. They weren't the practical words of caution I had heard from my mother or mentor Laura. They weren't the promises of safety. They were words of faith. Faith in me, faith in my ability to take the leap. It was the kind of encouragement I needed at that moment, even though it meant taking a risk. I looked at the email one more time. My heart pounded in my chest, my hands shaking as I typed a response. "Thank you so much for this incredible opportunity. I would love to accept the position and begin this new chapter in my career." The moment I hit send, I felt a rush of adrenaline, immediate relief mixed with sheer terror. I had done it. I had chosen the unknown. I had chosen to step into a future that wasn't guaranteed, to pursue something that might fail. But it was also a future that held the possibility of everything I had ever wanted. I stared at the screen, waiting for a reply. The silence in the room felt deafening, like the world was holding its breath. It was a moment of truth, a turning point that would define the rest of my life. Then my phone buzzed again. The magazine had responded, this time with a more formal offer and the promise of an immediate start. My heart soared as I read the details, but the weight of my decision was still heavy. I had just sealed my fate. There was no turning back. The immediate consequences of my decision were overwhelming. My thoughts raced as I thought of my parents' reaction, the disappointment I might face from those who expected me to stick to the safe, predictable path. I could already hear my mother's voice in my head, warning me of the risks. But at that moment, something inside me broke free. The years of quiet yearning, of putting my dreams aside, had finally reached their breaking point. I had to believe in myself, or I would forever wonder what could have been. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, feeling the weight of my decision press down on me. This was the moment that would define everything. I had no idea what would happen next. I had no idea if I was ready for the challenges ahead. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope, a belief that I could handle whatever came my way. I knew the road ahead would be difficult. There would be setbacks, there would be moments of doubt, but I had made my choice. I had chosen to pursue my passion, and that was worth everything. And just like that, the storm inside me calmed. The uncertainty didn't go away, but it no longer controlled me. The future was still unknown, but for the first time in my life, I felt ready to face it head on. The leap was terrifying, but it was the only way forward. The next morning, as I prepared to meet Jane one last time, I knew the decision I had made would change everything. And though I didn't know where this path would lead, I was ready to see it through. The weeks following my decision felt like uncharted territory, full of both triumphs and challenges that constantly tested my resolve. I threw myself into my work with the magazine, immersing myself in deadlines, interviews, and the intricate art of storytelling. It was exhilarating, but it was also overwhelming. The self-doubt that had plagued me in the past still occasionally crept in. Was I truly cut out for this? Could I really succeed in this new life I had chosen? But over time, the uncertainty began to fade, replaced by a quiet confidence. I learned how to manage the pressure, how to find balance between the demands of my career and the peace I needed within myself. There were moments of frustration, deadlines that seemed impossible to meet, articles that didn't quite come out the way I imagined, days when I felt utterly exhausted and unsure of my ability. But there were also moments of clarity, small victories that made me believe I was on the right path. One of those moments came when one of my articles was published on the front page of the magazine. I stared at the page, the words I had written now immortalized in print, and realized how far I had come. It wasn't just about writing anymore. It was about trusting myself, persevering through the doubt, and knowing that my voice, my unique perspective, was something worth sharing with the world. But the journey wasn't without its challenges. My decision to leave my old life behind wasn't an easy one for everyone to understand. My parents, especially my mother, initially struggled to see why I would take such a risk. "You could have kept your job, Emma," she would say. "Why risk everything on a dream that may not pay off?" Their concerns weren't unfounded. I could see the worry in their eyes, the fear that I was walking away from stability. But as I became more successful in my new career, as I built a life based on my passion, their doubts slowly melted away. One evening, my mom called me after seeing one of my articles on the magazine's website. Her voice softened, filled with pride. "You did it, Emma. I didn't understand at first, but now I see. You were right. You took a risk, and it paid off. I'm so proud of you." That conversation felt like a turning point. It wasn't just a victory in my career, but a validation of the decision I had made. It was a reminder that sometimes the people who love you most can't always see the path you're meant to walk. But as I learned, I had to trust my own instincts and forge my own way. There were also moments of personal growth that I hadn't anticipated. I began to understand the importance of self-care, of taking breaks when I needed them, of not letting the pursuit of success overshadow the need to nourish my spirit. I learned how to set boundaries, both professionally and personally, and to ask for help when I needed it. I had spent so long pushing myself to the limit, believing that if I didn't constantly hustle, I would fail. But over time, I realized that true success wasn't about working myself into the ground. It was about finding harmony between ambition and well-being. The most significant change, however, was the way I saw myself. I was no longer the girl who doubted her abilities, who shrank from the possibility of failure. I had become someone who believed in her potential, even when the road ahead seemed uncertain. I had learned that failure wasn't the end, it was just another step toward growth. The final piece of my journey came when I met with Jane one last time. She had been an integral part of my story. The boss who had given me the opportunity to return to a familiar path, the one who had helped me believe that success wasn't just for the chosen few. As we sat together in the cafe, I could see the pride in her eyes as she asked about my progress. "You've really made a name for yourself," she said. "I'm so impressed with how far you've come." I smiled, a sense of accomplishment washing over me. "I've learned a lot along the way, Jane. It hasn't been easy, but I don't regret my decision for a second." As we parted ways, I felt a sense of peace. The path I had taken wasn't the one I had envisioned when I first made the decision to leave my old job. It wasn't an easy ride, but it was mine, and that was enough. The closing scene of my story was simple yet profound. I stood on the balcony of my apartment one quiet evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, the world around me calm and still. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything I had overcome. I wasn't the same person who had been unsure of herself, who had feared taking risks. I was someone who had learned that the journey, no matter how difficult, was worth it. In that moment, I knew that no matter what the future held, I was ready to face it. I had chosen the path of resilience, of perseverance, and it had led me to this moment, standing at the edge of everything I had dreamed of, with the belief that anything was possible if I was willing to keep moving forward. I smiled, knowing this was just the beginning of something even bigger.